Welcome to Money First CEO, the podcast for business owners ready to run their business like a boss and make their money work smarter, not harder. I'm Harmon Johnston, bookkeeper, Profit First professional, business coach, and mum of two from Sydney, Australia. I've built a thriving business by mastering money habits and systems that create real freedom. This show will help you take control of your finances so you can build a business and life that truly works for you. Every episode delivers one powerful takeaway you can action right away for more clarity, confidence, and cash. And from time to time, I'll be joined by special guests, fellow entrepreneurs, experts, and real business owners, sharing their money wins, lessons, and insights to inspire your next move. Because when you put money first, you unlock the options and freedom you deserve. So hit follow, grab your coffee, and let's dive in. Hey there, and welcome back to the Money First CEO, where we turn messy finances into confident action, one episode at a time. I'm Harmon Johnston, and today we're diving into a hard truth every entrepreneur needs to hear. Ignoring your numbers is costing you more than you think. How avoiding your numbers become a habit. You train your brain to fear data, not just in dollars, but in sleepless nights, indecision and self-doubt, wasted time and energy chasing every next thing. What you don't track, you can't improve. And what you avoid is almost always costing you in ways you can't even see it. So let's unpack what's really at stake when you don't know your numbers and how to take your power back. So most people assume the cost of ignoring your numbers is just financial, like overspending or missed taxes, but the real cost is deeper. So we'll start off with the first cost, which is the mental bandwidth drain. If you ever found yourself thinking, can I afford this? Did that invoice go through? Can I pay myself this month? Am I even profitable? That constant background worry is draining you. Why checking your bank account becomes anxiety-inducing, and how to retrain that response. It shows up as analysis paralysis, burnout, constantly second-guessing your every move, constantly looking at solutions, everything someone talks about, something they do, you want to implement and think it will solve your problems. In the back of your mind, you're constantly looking for solutions. If something's happened that day, you're thinking, how can it be fixed? But you're scared and you don't know if that will work. And because you don't have clarity, you chase solutions that create more confusion and more costs. You sign up for courses or use softwares or memberships because you think they might have the solution to your problem. But instead of fixing the root cause, which is you don't know your numbers, it creates more confusion and additional costs that you probably can't afford. And also the lack of confidence in decision making. When you don't have data, you lead with emotion. You say yes to low-paying clients because you think low revenue is the root problem. I had a client cut her $97 offer after a P&L review showed it generated more support requests than revenue. So she cancelled offering that item altogether and she focused on a $2,000 group program because it gave her less stress and more profit. You could be delaying hiring even when it's time to grow and get help. You spend your time doing low-cost admin tasks that you can hire a junior to do and focus on higher-level work. So because you don't understand or have clarity on the numbers, you're just making decisions on the whim without much thought. And also when it comes to hiring, you either overhire too soon or you hold back because you think you can't afford it. Not knowing your margins, you're hiring people you can't afford or underpaying the ones that you can. How financial clarity gives you confidence to build your own org chart so you can have a plan. And then it's just a matter of executing that plan. Hiring from panic versus hiring from profit. You're hiring because you've just won this job and you need someone to come and do the work. You haven't run the numbers. You don't know how profitable this job is. You don't know how much you can afford to pay this person to do the work. So you're making all these things up as you go along. And at the end, you might be in for a rude shock because it's actually cost you more than you thought. And, there's not much left over. And it's because you didn't plan. You didn't look at the numbers. You didn't see, okay, this project is going to cost me 10 hours of work. That's how much I'm going to pay them. That's my cost. Plus, I want 60% margin. This is the minimum I need to cost for that service. If you don't do that exercise, you don't know if it's going to be worth it in the end. So what can be the cost of indecision? Missed growth opportunities. If you don't know your numbers, you don't know what your risk appetite is, how much buffer you have, what cost you can actually afford. You could have missed growth or partnership opportunities because you lack clarity. You're operating from gut, not facts. You think you're doing okay. You can see some money in the account and you think it's going to be enough to cover the expenses, but you don't know what your upcoming expenses are. You're staying stuck in the same revenue blanket, happy with just enough. I've been in that situation heaps of times. I've had a couple of good months and I'm like, you know what? I'm actually at a good place. I've got a good work-life balance. I'm paying myself what I'd like to pay. Everyone's got enough on their plate. I'm at a happy place. And the next minute you get a new client and it changes everything because now you've got to, find room for people to do the work. You have to hire. You have to, allocate some more time for yourself to make sure the transition's smooth. Yeah, but, if you don't know your numbers, it's hard to see if you can afford to take that new client on or not, especially for low profit clients or products. That's really important to know your profitability, your profit margins. And also at times you're reacting, not leading, changing your prices or offers without real reason. Reviewing and tweaking, making decisions based on profitability is what you need to be doing. Hard to plan cash flows for launches, seasons or quite months. You can't do that if you don't understand your numbers. Letting fear call the shots, desperate decisions. You have to make a decision because something's happened and you don't know what decision or what outcome you're seeking with that decision. So here's how to build decision confidence. You need a framework. And in my business, it's profit first. There's no negotiations with certain things and the money's allocated and that creates that discipline and a system for me to follow. Set financial rules. Say only take on projects with 60% margin, and that okay, that will give me enough to cover my operating costs and pay myself and have profit. Track a few key numbers. So I'd like you to start off with, just track a number for a week, just so you understand. So it could be a revenue one week. It could be your fixed expenses another week. It's how much you're paying yourself another week, or how much is your basis, another week. Just dive deep into those numbers and try and understand them and try and see a pattern. And that will give you clarity. And you'll learn so much about your business just looking at those things. I'll talk about a few client stories. So I had a freelancer and she was constantly in panic mode. She was making about $8,000 a month and taking home about $2,000, but there was no system. There was no clarity. Once we reviewed her numbers, she cried, not from fear, but relief. 3 months later, she was paying herself, saving for taxes, working less with more profit because she wasn't tracking, how much profit she was making on each job. Another client of mine is a 6-figure coach and she was making over $10,000 a month. And when we ran her numbers, her profit margin was only 8%, which is $800 a month. And that was such an eye-opener for her. And she's like, how can I improve it? I was like, let's have a look. Let's have a look at your numbers. We cut down some expenses. She renegotiated some of the rates with her contractors and she doubled her profit in 2 months. Same revenue, she didn't have to put additional pressure on herself to gain more clients. So clarity breeds control and chaos breeds fear. When you have clarity, you feel in control. So most business owners say things like, I think I'm doing okay. I pay myself here and there when I can. Or the best one is my accountant handles that. And I'm like, it's your business. You need to be leading it. You need to know. It's nice if your accountant cares, but he's got 200-300 other clients. He's not going to care about your business as much as you do. So look at your revenue, know your numbers, and as a business owner, you have a good gut feeling too at times because you're in the trenches all the time. Do you know your profit margin? How much you need to cover a month of expenses? Your most profitable offer or product? What you paid yourself last month? If not, there's no shame, just a sign it's time to shift from guessing to knowing. When you lead with financial clarity, you price with strategy, you hire with confidence, you stop chasing shiny objects, you lead your business, you don't just work in it. And that's where the CEO and the technician mindset sets in. Business owners, you don't look at numbers often. You stay in the doer mode. You just let go. You don't sit back. And that's when, a lot of the business coaches talk about allocating a day, a week, or a month to actually work on the business and not in the business, and that's the day they want you to put on the CEO hat and look at the business from a high level point, how things are going, how they could improve. Because once you're in the doer mode, you just, constant hustle mode. You can't think clearly because it's just about moving from one thing to another. Knowing your numbers is a core part of becoming a CEO, not just acting like one. And it unlocks better decisions, strategic delegation, and smart scaling. So this is a CEO shift, that you feel from busy to intentional. So grab a pen and let's do a mini audit. Do you know your actual profit from last month? What are your top 3 expense categories? How much of your income goes to you? Which offer brings in the highest profit? If you're unclear on any of these, great. That's your starting point. I'd like you to write that down, and that will be the first sign of knowing your numbers, and it will start to give you some clarity. You'll actually learn so much about your business just doing this little audit. So your takeaway for this week is block 30 minutes in your calendar to look at your money in and out, pull your P&L, compare last month to this month, and ask yourself, is the profit going up, down, or flat? And why? I'd love to know. So share on socials, send me an email, and prioritize knowing your numbers because numbers tell a story. That's it for today's episode on the Money First CEO. If you hit home, take action. Just don't think about it. And remember, profit starts with knowing. Don't leave it to chance. Thanks for hanging out with me on Money First CEO. If you got value from this episode, hit subscribe, drop a 5-star review, and share it with someone who's building their business too. All the goodies are in the show notes, and you can find me on socials for more tips and tools to help you. Until next time, keep putting money first, and the rest will follow.